Sunday night football, we get the 49ers and the Rams. There's $1 million in prizes, so we're here to break it down for you beautiful people. Let's do it. Not now. Hold your horses. But right now. Welcome into this beautiful channel, you beautiful people. You fellas. Let's get into this bad boy. Yeah, we're covering it. We're covering the showdown slate on Sunday night for all you out there. And let's start up top in salary order with Cooper Kupp. Yeah, it's hard not to like Cooper Kupp. Yeah, my initial 150 lineups that I have built out in the optimizer era down below on Patreon if you want to use it, I currently have around 80% Cooper Kupp, a man who's going to play about 70% of his snaps out of the slot. Well, he'll see K'Wan Williams, who has been solid for the most part in his career, but has not been healthy of late and has not been solid at limiting. Neither has this whole defense, Mr. Cooper Kupp. This is a totally different team than the Green Bay Packers. You don't have to just take away one player in Adams. You still, if you take away Kupp or attempt to, you still have to account for Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyler Higbee, who's had success in this matchup. That's why I don't think they can give too many resources to Cooper Kupp, especially when he's in the slot. You don't really double team the slot ever. So Kupp, who's already dropped 26.2 and 29.6 Draftkings points so far, and I have him projected for over 25 points, 5 points more than anybody else on the slate, is firmly in plays and firmly currently one of the 5 captains I have ownership towards. The second player is his quarterback, and I don't have ownership towards his quarterback per se in the captain spot, but I do have about 45% ownership to Matthew Stafford, more than I do to Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, Matthew Stafford, he's not going to give you any insane rushing yards, so that's not going to be able to pay off this price tag of $10,800. But when you look at the rest of the slate, I mean, there's not that many expensive players in the slate. You're talking Cooper Kupp, who normally on these showdown slates is $13,000. We've talked about this for the main slate videos. If you haven't checked those out yet and the slate has not started, the earlier game from today on Sunday, well, then be sure to check it out because the salaries are going to be softer because people are playing that normally don't play DFS. Maybe that's you, and they want you to make it easy to make a lineup. Normally, Cooper Kupp is $1,000 more. You might think he's expensive on this slate. Normally, he's $1,000 more. So we're automatically getting a benefit, and because of that discount, I think it's even more advantageous to play him. Now, you don't have to play Cooper Kupp with his quarterback. It obviously will bode out well for you. If Cooper Kupp goes off, Matthew Stafford's probably doing well. Stafford's coming off of one of the best games, and when you factor in the circumstances, likely his best game of the year, 74% completion percentage, 366 yards, and 2 tuds against the Tampa Bay secondary. Now he gets an easier matchup in this secondary, a more difficult pass rush, I would say, but an easier matchup. I like Stafford. He's my only other player other than Cooper Kupp projected out for over 20 points on this slate. Deebo Samuel is not going to be, let's say it this way, he's probably going to be just as owned as Matthew Stafford, maybe even higher owned, but not as much of a priority. Now he is cheaper, so that looks nice. I still have Stafford as the better play for $800 more. Deebo is battling injury. Deebo will be put in the backfield for sure. He had 10 attempts in that last game. Expect somewhere around there this time out there, but it's leading to less routes run, and those less routes run are leading to less overall targets. And now the Green Bay Packers kind of showed the way to stop this to an extent, and the Packers don't even have as good of a run defense. The Rams rank #1 in run defense, right? You end up having, right, in that front of that defense, Aaron Donald, Von Miller's up there, Floyd's in there somewhere, and the linebackers, right, all that, and the safeties who can tackle, Ramsey playing on the inside slot and linebacker a lot for them this year. So when you see that happening, well, yeah, the Packers kind of exposed it. When Deebo's in the backfield, you're not really scared of Juwan Jennings or, for the most part, Brandon Ayuk's in the matchups. You could bring an extra safety down into the box and stop the run, and that's what they did. And now you're going up against more difficult defense. Now, Deebo's incredible. He's unbelievable. He can obviously pay off this price tag and beat that matchup. It's just a tough spot, X's and O's wise, compared to others around him. Jimmy Garoppolo is $9,000. This is the cheapest we ever see quarterbacks for the most part. You never really see a starting quarterback this cheap. It's because he doesn't have much mobile upside. It's because they're not really trying to throw the ball more than 20 to 25 times in a game. He has had success, a 300-yard passing game in Week 18 against this 49ers team, and he put up a good amount of fantasy points, so we know that there's some upside there. He put up 17.7 fantasy points, having 2 interceptions and a touchdown that week. He has some concerns with Deebo being banged up, with Trent Williams, who had an ankle injury earlier in the year and missed one of the games against the Rams. He's banged up, so that's a little bit of a concern. I'd rather go to these guys below Jimmy Garoppolo's price tag, and a lot of people might build a Cooper Kupp Stafford approach, but we can definitely find some leverage down here. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. is definitely going to be a leverage play. The amount of people that will play this week, Eli Mitchell, who's cheaper than him, over Odell in this $8,000 range, I would say you're probably going to see 35-40% ownership on Eli Mitchell. You're probably going to see 10 to 15% less on Odell. Now, personally, I'm interested in Odell Beckham Jr. He's staying on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. He just played 92% of the snaps last time out. He didn't play this 49ers team in Week 10, but when Cooper Kupp is on the outside for about a third of his snaps, mainly in the slot, Odell's going to have one-on-one matchups, and they're going to take those one-on-one matchups. They did in the last game. Odell is coming off of an 8-target game, getting more chemistry with one Matthew Stafford. He's going to see Emmanuel Mosley, the undrafted free agent that is fantastic for the 49ers, their best secondary player more than likely. He'll see Johnson on the other side. He's got about 10 to 15 pounds on both these dudes. I think he has a natural advantage as well. The problem is he going to get downfield usage? We'll have to see. In this game, I think Odell is more of a game theory play. And for those of you that don't know what does a game theory play means, it means that I don't think a lot of people are going to play Odell, so I want to play Odell. Well, why does that matter, Sal? Well, one, I think he looks like a good play. He's not a terrible play. You don't play bad plays just to play them. I think he's a good play, and not a lot of people are going to play Odell Beckham Jr., returner. So when he hits, if he goes for 50, 60, 70 yards, 5-6 catches, and a touchdown, and he goes for 20-plus points in this game, I am jumping a lot of people who are reluctant to play him, and I think those people will go to Eliza Mitchell. Eliza Mitchell is firmly in play. The guy only continues to see 25 attempts per game over the last 8 games that he's played for this team. He's the starting running back, but Deebo Samuel is going to take away some of the run, and Elijah Mitchell has not had any success against the #1 run defense and defensive front of the Los Angeles Rams. Because of his heavy usage, I do think people will go to Mitchell over Odell Beckham Jr. It's really hard not to, right? 20-plus opportunities in 8 straight games now. He had 27 carries and 21 carries in 2 games this year against the Rams, and it didn't really lead to much. He didn't break 100 yards in either of those games. He has 48 carries for under 200 yards now, under 190 in those games. So I think Elijah Mitchell is going to be out there a lot. He has so many opportunities that all it really takes is to punch it into the end zone. If you're going to run the ball 22 times, you're going to get 60, 70 yards on a bad game, right? 2-3 yards per carry. As long as you find the end zone, it's a decent price tag for you, but I think a lot of people are going to think that, play him over Odell. Now, this next range is the range that I would say I probably end up liking the most on the slate. It's because these guys are cheaper, but they still have really good roles and they're projecting out nicely. George Kittle at $7,400 is a slam dunk yes for me. I know that they're not throwing the ball a lot on this team, but when they do throw the ball, their #1 matchup advantage is George Kittle, not just against this team, not just against the Packers last week. It doesn't matter how good your linebackers are or your safeties. It's going to be a really good spot for George Kittle here. And George Kittle, by the way, $7,400 projects out for me for 13.5 fantasy points. He should technically be priced in the upper $8,000 range based on my projections. I like Kittle at $7,400. I think Akers at $7,000 is fine. He's okay. I think a lot more people play Akers over Kittle. I still prefer Kittle. And because of this, I think that Akers also, coming off of a game where he touches the ball over 25 times, although fumbled twice, you might see the veteran Sony Michel see touches. Darrell Henderson might come back from IR. He's eligible to return. Akers, for me, does project out right now as somebody who should be in the $9,000 range, so he's clearly underpriced. But this is the one thing that I will say for Akers. I'm banking on him because I think he gets red zone usage and receiving game usage. He ran 24 routes, 3 catches, 3 targets last week. I'm not so much confident in his rushing ability on the ground. The 49ers, the Packers were the #1 rush offense in terms of success rate on their carries. #1. Not a lot of people knew that last week. They halted them. They were able to stop the Packers run. This defensive line is healthy, not only from a pass rush, but from a run stop standpoint. I'm concerned about Akers from a rushing standpoint. Sure, maybe he could put up 40 or 50 yards, somewhere around there. I'm more so banking on the fact that he's going to get red zone usage, and he might catch 3 or 4 balls and add 6 or 7 points there. If he was $10,000, if he was $9,000, I'm not as interested. $7,000, he doesn't have to do as much. So I like Akers and Kittle, and we can talk about these guys right now. I've taken Kittle over 48.5 receiving yards in player props, and I've taken Akers under 55.5 rushing yards, and that's exactly the analysis I just mentioned. I like Kittle. I like Akers because of his price tag in DFS, and he'll be used in the passing game and around the goal line, and this team is implied to score 25 points. I don't necessarily like the fact that he'll be able to go out there against a good defensive line and go for 60-plus rushing yards. If you want to take these props, it's on prizepicks.com. It is linked in my bio down below in the description, but you just go to prizepicks.com. And the big thing, you use the code SAL, you get a free instant deposit match up to $100. Free instant bet up to $100. PrizePicks.com, code SAL. Tell your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, all the people that you'll be watching these games with at the bar with your friends in your group message. Let them know it's a limited time offer while football lasts. Code SAL on PrizePicks.com. Free instant bet up to $100. Rooskies. Brandon Ayuk is next up on the screen, and I can almost guarantee he will be one of the lowest owned players who will have a significant role. Brandon Ayuk is going to run, even if they don't throw a lot in this game, at least 20 routes, right? He'll probably lead this team in routes run. Maybe Kittle will be right there next to him, but Brandon Ayuk is a solid GPP play. He's not an elite play by any means, but if you're in this price range and you can leave money on the table, he's the only guy in the $6,000 range. I do think that Brandon Ayuk finds himself in an interesting spot. The matchup against the Packers last week was not the matchup that you wanted to be playing with Brandon Ayuk. The Packers safeties limit big plays. Jair Alexander was back playing about 25% of the snaps, and in general, Eric Stokes is fast, can stop some of the underneath routes across the field from Brandon Ayuk, and that's what you saw. You saw 1 target from Brandon Ayuk, but this is a totally different week. We just saw in week 18 why this is a matchup advantage for Brandon Ayuk, right? He goes over 100 yards on just 7 targets. He scores nearly 20 fantasy points on 33 routes run. Brandon Ayuk played 96% of the snaps. He ran 21 routes, leading the team with no catches against the Packers. So this is technically, we know Deebo's the wide receiver 1, but he's kind of this hybrid player, right? The wide receiver in this game that will run the most routes and see the most targets is likely Brandon Ayuk, and they're likely to be playing from behind, but he's not going to be owned. And his price tag is dropping because he put up a goose egg last week. I think Ayuk is one of the better GPP plays this week. He's not a standout, yes, because Cam Akers, Kittle still project out better for him significantly. But if you're in this trying to win $1 million or trying to win the $250,000 to first prize, Ayuk is an interesting name to look at. Because $1,000 less, there's going to be guys that will be higher owned than him. And I like these guys. I do indeed like the teammates of Tyler Higbee and Van Jefferson. Nothing wrong with Tyler Higbee here. He's had success in this matchup. He hasn't gotten a lot of downfield success. The linebackers are bigger linebackers. It's probably the worst matchup for the tight ends remaining against against this Greenlaw and the San Francisco linebackers that are fantastic, maybe the best part of their team outside of Joey Bosa on defense. So I think that Tyler Higbee's fine. He's probably touchdown or bust. I think people will maybe over-own him, so let's actually move him from a yes to a maybe. I do prefer Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson, we got to see go out there and play 90+% of the snaps. Even in a game, he ran 39 routes. Even in a game, only 3 targets where they were winning the whole game. They were winning for 3/4 of that game by a good amount against Tampa Bay. If this game plays a little bit closer, yeah, they're not going to have 15 possessions, but if Van Jefferson can go out there and play 70% of the snaps at this price tag with a one-punch upside for home runs and touchdowns that he has, I think he'll be a little bit lower owned. In this $5,000 range, Higbee will be the safer play. Van Jefferson will be the play if you have a good risk tolerance that can put up 20 fantasy points when Higbee likely won't. Now we start to scroll below $5,000 values. I'm not really interested in Sony Michel. There is a narrative to say Cam Akers fumbled twice in that last game. Sony Michel was on the field for the last game-winning field goal drive for the Rams. Do they keep that going? Do they trust Akers with another week of ball security and all this stuff? Almost lost them that game. Maybe there is something to that. I'd rather take my chances on an Ayuk or a Van Jefferson, who I know are going to be out there at lower ownership. The defenses are fine. They're in play. They both have solid pass rushes. They both stop the run. The secondaries for the Rams is pretty solid. 49ers is shaky, but they're in play because you never know. I mean, the 49ers last week led the slate with over 20 DraftKings points because they blocked the fucking punt and a field goal, right? The kickers are in play. I probably prefer the kickers, especially because they'll be kicking in good environments in Los Angeles, and these guys they're solid, right? I mean, Matt Gay is averaging almost 10 fantasy points per game. Robbie Gould has never missed in the postseason a field goal. They trust him. They feel good about lining him up. They don't go for 4th downs all that often with Jimmy G if it's more than like 3 or 4 yards and they can't run. So the kickers are firmly in play. If you're looking for a value play below the kickers and defenses, right, below $5,000, I'm not going to Sony Michel. We can scroll a little bit here. None of these guys really excite me. If you had to choose somebody below 5K that's not a kicker or defense, it would be Juwan Jennings, but I've discussed in other videos, I'm not that high on Juwan Jennings. I know everybody's going to say, but Sally scored 2 touchdowns. He popped off against the 49ers or the Rams last time out. I completely understand that. That was last time out. That is the only time this year he has done anything. In the postseason the last 2 weeks, his role has decreased. He has actually been taken off the field at times for, yes, Travis Benjamin, who caught a ball last week and ran about 5 routes. I think Juwan Johnson, the athlete, is a very solid athlete. I think that in a better offense, he can thrive, but he is the number 4 pass catching option behind Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk in this offense for a team that loves to run the ball, top 5 run plays per game. So how much upside does he have? Now, the thing we have going for us is he's only $2,200. We're not betting on this guy to score 20 fantasy points. At $2,200, can you beat out the kickers and defenses, right, for half the price? If he can beat out the kickers and defenses and score 7 to 10 points here, that's all we really need. And 7 to 10 points is 3 catches for 40 yards, right? Or just find the end zone. Now, the problem there is the guy's going to see 3 or 4 targets. He's running 15 routes a game in the postseason. It's basically leading right now for him for 4 catches for 36 yards so far, or 35 yards in the postseason. And we need him to do that in one game. It's a little bit shaky. If you're looking for somebody below the price tag, it's likely him. The only other option down here is Kyle Juszczyk. Don't expect much out of Kyle Juszczyk. You're going to be seeing maybe 1 or 2 receptions. In the postseason, they can get a little bit more creative and use him in different ways. But Kyle Juszczyk is not really a guy that I'm jumping up and down for. It's him or Juwan Jennings. Whoever's down here and scores a touchdown, they're going to get in. I'm not interested in Blanton. Hasty only played 1 snap in the last game. Travis Benjamin did run a couple of routes, but not really interested. Trent Sherfield did run 2 or 3 routes, not interested. And Ben Skowronek played 1 snap, ran 1 route in that last game, not interested. So the values here are Juwan Jennings and Kyle Juszczyk. Ideally, I would not be getting down to this range. I do prefer the kickers to the defenses. Between the kickers and Juwan Jennings, it really depends on what the rest of your lineup is looking like. I'd rather leave, say, $1,000 or $2,000 on the table and just play Juwan Jennings over Matt Gay, just to have the go for 4th down a lot more the Rams, just to have the ability to get different by leaving money on the table. But there you go. There's the showdown slate. There's the final showdown slate before the Super Bowl, the final before the final, the eve of showdown slates. So thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this video, please, 2 seconds, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to let your fellas know, your friends, your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, code SAL, S-A-L, my name, on prizepicks.com. Free instant bet matched up to $100. So be sure to check that out. It's linked in the bio, but you can just go to prizepicks.com. You all rocking all the tools, the optimizers, the projections, the ranks, the ownership. It's all down below with a bunch of other stuff. If you're interested in DFS, you can check it out on my Patreon. I'll see you when I see you, gang, and I'll see you all in the next one.